The desert outside New Earth Base was dry, flat, and quiet. Sun stretched out in every direction. Not even the wind moved. But just before sunset, something changed. A bright streak of fire appeared in the sky. It shot downward, fast and silent, and hit the ground with a loud crash. A small patrol team was sent out to check. What they found was strange. A silver pod, half buried in the sand, shaped like an egg. It was smooth and had glowing lines across its surface. It wasn't human technology. It didn't belong to any known ship. They brought it back to the base. The scientists gathered around. Soldiers kept their weapons ready. Everyone was curious and nervous. No one knew what was inside. Dan was not a soldier or a scientist. He was just a mechanic. He fixed broken air systems, cleaned water filters, and helped with small repairs. But he liked to watch when something unusual happened, so he stood near the back of the room. Looking over shoulders. Inside the silver pod, they saw a girl. She was not human, but she looked peaceful. Her skin was light blue, and she had crystal-like lines on her face that gave off a soft glow. Her eyes were closed. She looked young, maybe no older than 20. She wasn't moving, but she was breathing. Dr. Rourke, the lead scientist, turned to Captain Morrow. The body is stable. Some kind of stasis field is keeping her alive. Captain Morrow crossed his arms. Do we know what she is? No, said Dr. Rourke. But she's not one of ours. Not a clone. Not a known species. This is something new. One of the younger scientists said. Maybe she's a message or a warning. Dr. Rourke looked down at the pod. Or maybe she's a weapon. The captain stepped forward. If we can't scan her properly, we'll have to open the pod. The moment we do, said another scientist, the stasis field will drop. She'll wake up or die, said someone else. There was silence. Captain Morrow gave a short nod. Then we'll have to act fast. Study everything, even if that means opening her up. Dan's eyes widened. You mean, cut her? Dr. Rourke looked at him. This could be a threat. We need to understand it. The section may be required. Dan stepped forward. She hasn't hurt anyone. She hasn't moved. You can't just cut her open. What if she's alive in there? What if she's not a threat? She might be dangerous, said the captain. Or infected, or worse. Dan pointed at the pod. Or maybe she's just lost or in trouble. Look at her. She looks like she's sleeping. Dr. Rourke frowned. You're not in charge here, Dan. This is science. No, Dan said, his voice rising. This is wrong. You can't treat her like a machine. She's breathing. She's alive. The room went quiet. Then someone gasped. The alien girl's fingers twitched. Dan stepped closer to the pod. Did you see that? She moved. One of the machines beeped, heart rate increasing, brain waves changing. She's waking up, said another scientist. Captain Morrow took a step back. Get ready. Weapons up. The pod began to glow brighter. A soft humming sound filled the lab. The glass started to fade. Turning clear. Dan held out his hand. Wait, don't do it. No weapons, please. The pod opened with a soft hiss. Warm air escaped. The girl inside slowly sat up. She looked around, confused. Her silver eyes blinked. She looked at Dan first. He didn't move. She spoke one word, in a soft and strange voice. Asha? Dan blinked. Is that your name? She nodded slowly. Asha. Captain Morrow stepped forward. Don't move. Asha turned her head. She looked at the captain, then the scientists, then the soldiers. Dan saw her shoulders tense. It's okay, Dan said gently. You're safe. She looked back at him, her eyes focused. They follow, she whispered, then leaned forward. Who follows? She touched her head. Varnock. They chase. I ran. Captain Morrow frowned. Is that a species? Asha nodded. They take. They use. I escaped. The lights in the lab flickered. Asha's skin glowed slightly. Dan felt something strange in the air, like static. But not dangerous. You ran from them, Dan said. Yes, she said. Now they come. Are they coming here? Captain Morrow asked. Asha nodded. Because of me, everyone went silent. Dr. Rourke said quietly, she's a signal. No. Asha said, I warn, not call. Dan looked at her. You tried to warn us, she nodded. Before they reached, the captain turned to his officers. Raise the alert. Lock down the base. Asha stood up fully. She was weak, but she stayed on her feet. Dan stayed close to her. He could see she was tired, maybe even hurt, but not dangerous. You helped me, she said to him. I didn't want them to hurt you, Dan said. She reached out and gently touched his hand. Thank you. The lab shook slightly. The floor rumbled. One of the soldiers shouted. Unknown energy reading above the base. Dan looked out the window. In the sky, shapes were moving through the clouds. Dark, sharp ships. Nothing like human design. The Varnik had arrived. Dan turned to Asha. Can we stop them? She looked at the ships, then back at him. If you trust me, I can help. Captain Morrow gave Dan a look. She better be telling the truth. Dan nodded. She's not the enemy. The base lights turned red. The defense systems came online. And Dan stood beside the alien girl, ready to protect the one he had just saved. The alarm lights turned the walls of New Earth Base red. A deep siren echoed across the halls. Soldiers ran to their posts. Scientists grabbed their data drives and secured lab equipment. Outside, the sky above the desert had changed. Strange. Ships floated high in the clouds, dark and sharp like flying knives, inside the lab. Dan stood close to Asha. She looked out the window at the enemy ships. Her silver eyes stayed locked on the sky. Captain Morrow spoke into his radio. All stations. Prepare for contact. Enemy presence confirmed. We need full shield power and all cannons armed. The base was never meant to fight off an alien fleet. It was a research outpost, not a fortress. But now it stood face to face with the unknown. Asha placed her hand on the glass. Small blue sparks formed at her fingertips. She was connected to something. Dan noticed the lights above her flickered, but no one else seemed to pay attention. What are they after? Dan asked her. Asha didn't answer at first. She kept watching the ships. Then she spoke softly. They hunt voices. They take minds. They silence stars. Dan didn't fully understand, but he knew what she meant. These creatures were not just invaders. They were destroyers of thought, of life. They erased those who didn't follow them. You said you escaped them, Dan said. Asha turned to him. Yes, I broke their link. They hate that. Captain Morrow stepped closer. How many ships? A soldier checked the radar screen. At least 12, sir. Maybe more behind them. 2 large ones in the center. They're not broadcasting anything. Just silent. The captain looked at Asha. Can they be reasoned with? Asha shook her head. They speak only control. They listen only to fear. Dr. Rourke leaned forward. How did you escape them? I had my mind, she said. I used light. I broke their code. Dan looked curious. You used light. Asha nodded. I was trained before they came. My people used energy to protect thoughts. I learned fast. They didn't know. But once I broke free, they followed. Captain Morrow tapped his fingers on a nearby table. If you can disrupt their control, maybe we can use that. Dr. Rourke agreed. Can we build something with your help? A defense system? A signal? Asha stepped toward the central console. She looked at the screen, then placed her hand on it. The symbols changed. Strange patterns filled the monitor. This is their network, she said. Their ship in the center controls the others. It sends orders. If you break it, they fall apart. The captain gave a quick nod. Then we aim at the central ship. Asha looked tired. You must be fast. They learn. They adapt. Outside, the sky turned darker. The enemy ships began to glow red from beneath. Their engines charged. With power. Dan turned to Asha. Can you still use that light? The one you used to escape. I can, she said. But I need power. More than this room gives. Dan pointed toward the energy station. We have reactors under the base. Maybe they're enough. Captain Morrow gave the order. Take her to the main reactor. But if anything goes wrong, shut it down. Dan nodded. I'll go with her. He led Asha through the winding halls. Soldiers and engineers moved quickly around them. Some stopped and stared. A few even gave small nods, as if they now saw her not as a danger, but as hope. They reached the reactor room. Inside, giant machines hummed, blue light pulsed through thick cables, then opened a side panel and showed her the core. Asha stepped forward slowly. She placed both hands on the edge of the energy field. The light around her body began to grow brighter. Her skin glowed gently, and the crystal lines along her face lit up like stars. Dan watched in silence. He had never seen anything like it. She looked peaceful, focused, like she belonged in that moment. Then Asha opened her eyes. The glow faded slightly. "It's enough," she said. Then helped her back to the lab. She moved faster now, stronger. When they returned, the captain pointed at the screen. "They're moving. 2 ships dropping toward the base." Asha raised her hand. "I'm ready." Dan stayed beside her as she stepped onto the center platform. She spread her fingers wide. Light streamed from her palms. It shot into the main screen, then out through the base's antenna. Outside, a sudden wave of blue energy shot into the sky. One of the enemy ships paused. It turned sharply and crashed into another. A third ship fell from the air, spinning out of control. Cheers erupted in the control room. "She's doing it," someone shouted. Then looked at Asha. Her face was calm, but her knees began to shake. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I can keep going." Then one of the larger enemy ships fired. A red beam hit the side of the base. The walls shook. Lights flickered. Dust fell from the ceiling. "We have damage to outer defense lines," a soldier reported. Captain Morrow grabbed the rail. "Divert all weapons to cover her. Protect the platform." Then helped Asha stay standing. Her hands kept glowing, sending more energy into the sky. Another ship exploded. 2 more began falling back, but the central ship remained untouched. Asha whispered, "Too strong. I must get closer." Then looked at the captain. "She needs to get to the signal tower. From there, she can reach the main ship." The captain hesitated. "It's exposed." "I'll go with her," Dan said. Asha looked at him. "It's not safe," then gave a small smile. "You came here alone. Now it's my turn." The captain gave a short nod. "Take a team. Go now, Dan." And Asha ran toward the tower, a narrow metal structure on the far side of the base. It shook with every blast, but still stood tall. As they climbed the stairs, Dan looked up at the sky. The main ship loomed like a mountain in the air, black and red. Silent and watching, Asha reached the top. She stepped onto the signal plate and placed her hands on the metal. The tower pulsed with power. Light shot upward like a beam. The enemy ship began to tremble. Asha closed her eyes. "Now, strike it, while I hold the gate open." Captain Morrow's voice came over the radio. "All units, fire on the central ship, everything we've got, from the ground." Missiles and beams launched into the sky. Asha stood tall, glowing, with the power of a sun. And Dan stood beside her, ready for whatever came next. The wind howled around the signal tower. Dust and smoke filled the air as enemy ships flew overhead. Dan stood next to Asha at the top platform. Her hands pressed firmly against the metal plate. A glowing beam of light shot straight into the sky from her fingers. It shimmered blue and white, cutting through the clouds like a sword. From the ground below, missiles launched one after another. Explosions flashed against the night sky. The central enemy ship, dark and massive, shook from the impacts, but it stayed in the air. Captain Morrow's voice came through the radio. "The central ship's shield is weakening. Keep firing." Asha opened her eyes. Her face was pale, but her voice stayed calm. "One more strike. That will break the shield." Then looked at her, worried. Her legs trembled. Her skin glowed less than before. "You're getting weaker. I must hold the gate," she said. "If I stop now, the network returns." More enemy ships moved into position. One aimed its weapon at the tower. Dan saw it before Asha did. "Get down." A red beam shot toward them, then grabbed Asha and pulled her to the floor. The beam hit the side of the tower. Sparks flew. The platform shook, and part of the railing broke away. The beam passed, but the damage was done. Flames burst out below them. Smoke started to rise. "We can't stay here," Dan said. Asha sat up slowly If I stop now, everything resets. Dan looked out across the desert. The enemy ship's shield flickered. Their chance was slipping away. Back at the base, Captain Morrow gave the order. Final strike. Use the plasma cannon. A giant weapon, saved for last, powered up. A bright green light charged at the front of the base. The cannon fired. A long beam of pure energy flew toward the central ship. Asha raised her hands one last time. She used all the energy she had left. The blue light from her body merged with the plasma beam. The enemy ship's shield shattered. The beam struck the ship directly. Fire and smoke burst from the center. The ship split into two parts and began falling from the sky. Everyone knew. Earth base watched as the massive ship crashed into the sand far beyond the hills. The ground shook like thunder. The control room cheered. Then helped Asha to her feet. She was barely conscious, her head resting against his shoulder. You did it, Dan whispered, but Asha didn't smile. She looked into the distance. Others remained. Dan looked back at the sky. The smaller enemy ships were turning. Some flew away. Others dropped suddenly. As if disconnected from command. We broke their leader, Dan said. The rest are lost. Asha gave a weak nod. For now. Dan helped her down the tower. Smoke and broken metal made the stairs slippery, but he didn't let go of her. The soldiers met them halfway and helped carry Asha back to the base. Inside the medical bay. Doctors checked her condition. Machines beeped. A nurse gave her oxygen. She lay quietly. Her eyes closed. Dan waited by her side. He didn't leave. Even when the room became quiet again. Hours passed. Captain Morrow came in and sat beside Dan. He didn't speak at first. Then he said, "She saved the base." Dan nodded. "She risked everything. She came here with nothing," the captain said. "No weapon, no army, just a warning." Dan looked at Asha, and they wanted to cut her open, to study her like an object. The captain looked down. "That was a mistake. She trusted us," Dan said. "Even after what we almost did." Captain Morrow stood. "The remaining enemy ships are retreating. We're safe for now, but we need to talk about what happens next." Dan stood too. "She's not leaving. She's not a prisoner," the captain said. "But we can't protect her forever. If more of them come, we won't survive next time." Dan thought for a moment. Maybe we don't have to wait for them. Maybe we prepare. Captain Morrow looked curious. "What do you mean?" Dan pointed to Asha. "She knows them, their ships, their systems, even their weakness. What if we build something stronger with her help?" The captain slowly nodded. "You think she'll stay?" Dan looked at her sleeping face. "I think she will." 2 days later, Asha woke up. Her eyes opened slowly, then focused on Dan, who sat beside her. "You stayed," she said softly. "I wasn't going to leave." Dan replied. "She sat up with help. I saw your people cheer. They were glad. You saved them," Dan said. "They know that now." Asha looked unsure. "I want to help more, but I need time." "We have time," Dan said. Captain Morrow visited again. He offered Asha a chance to join the base as an advisor. She agreed, but only if she could help build defenses, not weapons to harm. Work began the next day. Engineers, scientists, and Asha worked together. They used pieces from the fallen enemy ship. Asha taught them how to block the Varnic signal, how to shield the mine, and how to create light barriers, then help every step of the way. He didn't understand every detail, but he knew how to fix, build, and connect things. And Asha trusted him. The people of New Earth Base changed too. At first, they had feared her. Now they greeted her with respect. Some even smiled when she passed. Asha spent her evenings on the tower, watching the stars, then often joined her. "Do you think they'll come again?" he asked one night. "They will," she replied. "But next time, we'll be ready." Dan looked at her. Not just ready, stronger. Together, she looked at him, her silver eyes steady. Together. The desert sun rose slowly, casting golden light across the metal buildings of New Earth Base. The damage from the last attack was still visible. Scorch marks covered the walls. One of the towers leaned slightly to the side. Craters filled them. Sand around the base. But people were not afraid anymore. They worked harder than ever before. Asha stood beside Dan near the wreckage of the enemy ship that had fallen days ago. The remains were black and sharp like broken glass, pieces of alien. Metal still gave off a strange hum. Some wires inside still moved like they were alive. Dan held a small tool in his hand. He pulled out a panel and carefully removed a crystal from inside. "This is the last one," he said. Asha nodded. "That piece controls memory patterns. It can help block mind signals if we link it to your shield system." Dan smiled. "Then we'll install it today." Together, they walked back to the base. Soldiers, engineers, and scientists were working in teams. Some were digging deep trenches. Others were setting up shield towers and scanning the sky for movement. What had once been a research base was now becoming something else. A fortress. Captain Morrow stood in the command center, watching the sky on the large screen. He turned as Dan and Asha entered. "How long until the new shield system is ready?" he asked. "By tonight," Dan said. "We just need to finish connecting the last core." Asha placed the alien crystal on the table. "This will protect your minds. The Varnick use sound and light to enter thoughts. This will block both." The captain leaned forward. "Can we also build something that hits them back?" Asha looked serious. "Only if we understand their signal better. Their mind link is fast. If we send the wrong energy, it can return stronger." Dan understood what she meant. "If we're not careful, it'll hurt us instead." Captain Morrow nodded. "Then we'll focus on defense. At least for now." That evening, Dan climbed the new shield tower with Asha. The sky had turned dark. Stars began to shine above the desert. A few small drones floated in the air, watching for any sign of movement. Asha placed her hand on the new panel. Blue light spread across the tower. Energy flowed from the crystal into the system. One by one, other towers around the base lit up. Dan checked the readings. "The barrier is up, stronger than before." Asha looked around. "You build fast. Your people learn quickly." Dan gave a small smile. "We had a good teacher." For the next 2 days, New Earth base stayed quiet. The sky showed no signs of enemy movement. Drones went further each day, scanning the stars. Some soldiers began to relax, thinking maybe the worst was over. But Asha knew better. She stood on the tower every evening, watching the sky without blinking. She could feel the silence. It was not peace. It was waiting. On the third night, something changed. Asha stood suddenly and looked up. Her eyes narrowed, then followed her gaze. "What is it?" "They're near," she said, "but hiding. They're learning." Dan called Captain Morrow at once. "We need to prepare. Asha says they're close." The captain ordered full alert. Red lights came back on. Shield towers powered up. Soldiers ran to stations. The base became silent again, but this time it was ready. Later that night, 3 drones stopped responding. Their last images showed a shadow in the sky, a shape too large to be a normal ship. "They're testing us," Asha said. "Sending scouts." Captain Morrow stood in the command center. "Let them come. This time, we won't be afraid." The next morning, they arrived. 10 ships broke through the clouds. Not as large as the last fleet, but faster. They circled the base like wolves. No message, no warning. Then the first shot was fired. The energy beam struck the edge of the shield. The tower held. The barrier shimmered, but it didn't break. Dan watched from the control room. "The crystal is working. The signal is blocked." Asha focused her energy. She touched the main control panel, guiding the flow of power to the weak points. Two enemy ships moved lower. They tried to land. The captain gave the order. "Target their engines. Don't let them touch the ground." Cannons fired. The sky lit up. One ship exploded in the air. The other spun and crashed far from the base. Dan turned to Asha. "Can we send something back through their signal?" "Maybe," she said. "But I'll need to go outside the barrier." Dan frowned. "That's too dangerous." "I must," she said. "From inside, the signal is blocked for us to." Dan didn't like the idea, but he knew she was right. Captain Morrow gave her a small device. "If you're in danger, press this. We'll come." Asha nodded. Dan walked her to the edge of the base. The sand blew round them as she stepped outside the barrier. She stood still and closed her eyes. Her hands glowed. A thin beam of light shot from her fingertips into the sky. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the enemy ships paused. One turned sharply and crashed into another. Dan stared in shock. "What did you do?" "I sent noise," she said. "Something they don't understand." It broke their rhythm. More ships began to fall back. One by one, they stopped firing. Captain Morrow shouted, "They're retreating." The attack ended as quickly as it started. The sky cleared. The radar showed no more signs of ships. Dan ran out to Asha. She looked tired again, but she was smiling. "You stopped them," he said. "No." She replied, "We did." Back inside the base, everyone gathered in the command center. Captain Morrow stood before them. "We were afraid once," he said, "but not anymore. With Asha's help, we have changed. We are stronger. We will not run. And if they return, they'll find something new waiting for them." Humanity standing together, with allies, everyone cheered. Asha sat beside Dan, watching the crowd. "You are different from my people," she said. "In a good way?" Dan asked. "In a strong way," she said. Dan smiled. "So are you?" That night, they watched the stars again. The sky was quiet, but no one rested. Work continued. The fight was not over. But now, Earth had hope. 2 days had passed since the enemy ships fled the sky. The people at New Earth Base had started to believe the worst was behind them. The shield towers still glowed with power. Soldiers were training harder. Engineers were improving defenses. But something new was happening now. Whispers were moving through the base, quiet conversations, suspicious looks. Some people had started to question Asha's presence. Dan noticed it first when two guards at the gate spoke to each other while staring at her. Then at dinner, some workers refused to sit near her. A group of technicians had asked Captain Morrow if it was safe to let her near their systems. Dan stood with the captain in the command room. "This is not good. People are scared again." Captain Morrow sighed. "Fear always finds new shapes. First it was the aliens, now it's her. She saved us," Dan said. "Twice." "I know." The captain said, "But fear doesn't listen to reason. It listens to rumors." Outside, Asha stood alone near the shield tower. She watched the people around her. Their behavior had changed. They kept distance now. Their smiles were missing. A young soldier named Neil walked past. His eyes narrowed. "You're not one of us," he said. "We don't know what you're really doing here." Asha looked calm. "I help you protect this place. Or maybe you're calling your people to finish what they started," Neil said, then walked away. That night, Dan met Asha at the edge of the tower. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I've seen this before. My people did the same with outsiders." Fear is strong when trust is weak. Dan sat beside her. "I'll speak with the others. They just need to remember what you've done for us." "No," she said. "They must decide on their own. I will not force their minds." Suddenly, alarms rang through the base. Everyone ran to the control center. Captain Morrow pointed to the radar. "It's not a ship. It's something inside the base." Asha stepped forward. "They have sent a mind seed." Dan looked confused. "What's that?" "A device," Asha said. "Small, hidden, but dangerous. It feeds on thought and turns it dark. It makes people angry, afraid, and violent." Captain Morrow ordered a full search. Teams spread out. They scanned rooms, storage areas, even the food supplies. Nothing showed up for ours. Then one engineer shouted over the comms, "I found something," deep in the generator room. Dan and Asha rushed to the lower levels. The room was dark and filled with machines. In the corner, behind a panel, something glowed purple. Asha's eyes widened. "It's already active." The device was small, shaped like a stone, but it pulsed with strange energy. The air around it felt heavy. Dan reached for it, but Asha stopped him. "Don't touch it. It reads your mind and grows stronger." Dan asked, "Then how do we destroy it?" "We confuse it," Asha said. "Feed it thoughts it cannot understand." She stepped closer. Her eyes closed. She reached out with both hands. The room filled with silence. Even the machines seemed to pause. The light from the device began to flicker. Suddenly, the ground shook. A loud cry echoed in everyone's head. Then, the device cracked. Its glow faded. It dropped to the ground like a piece of coal. Asha stepped back. Her face was pale. Dan caught her before she fell. Later, as she rested in the medical room, Captain Morrow stood beside Dan. She destroyed it. The captain said, but it had already worked on some people. Dan nodded. I saw their eyes earlier, angry, unkind. We'll need to speak with the whole base, the captain said. They must know the truth. That evening, a meeting was called in the main hall. Everyone gathered, soldiers, workers, scientists, and engineers. Asha stood quietly at the side. Captain Morrow stepped forward. There was an enemy device in our base, he said, a seed that made us turn against each other. It filled us with fear and made us doubt one another. He looked around. It made us doubt the one who saved us, not once, but many times. Asha is not our enemy. She's the reason we are still standing. The room was silent. Then someone clapped. It was Neil, the same young soldier who had doubted her. He stepped forward. I was wrong, he said. I let fear speak for me. But she saved us again today, and I saw it with my own eyes. Others began to clap. The noise grew louder. People stood and nodded. Some stepped forward to thank Asha directly. Asha looked at Dan. He smiled. Looks like they remember now, he said. She smiled back. The mind seed is broken. Later that night, Asha and Dan walked out. Outside the base, the stars above were brighter than before. There will be more, she said. Devices, attacks, tricks. Dan nodded. Then we'll be ready, together. Asha looked up. There's one more thing we must do. What is it? We need to find the source of the signal. The heart of their hive. If we destroy that, the attacks will stop. Dan looked at the sky. Somewhere out there, the enemy still waited. Then let's find it, he said, before it finds us. The day was cold and clear. The desert sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the sand. Dan stood by the transport ship, watching as soldiers loaded supplies and weapons. Asha stood beside him, her silver eyes scanning the horizon. Captain Morrow approached. Are you ready for this? Dan nodded. We don't have a choice. Asha looked at them both. The hive is far. Beyond the mountains, it controls the Varnic. The transport ship hummed as the engines powered up. Inside, the team sat in silence. Everyone felt the weight of what lay ahead. Dan looked at Asha. How will we find the hive? She touched a small device on her wrist. This tracker is linked to their signal. It will lead us. The ship lifted off, rising above the desert sands. The base grew smaller below them, the shield towers still glowing faintly. The journey was long. The ship passed rocky canyons and vast plains. Outside the window, the sky darkened as the sun began to set. Asha sat quietly, her eyes closed. Dan wondered what she was thinking. He knew this was her world, her fight. But now, he was part of it to die at last. The ship landed near a rocky mountain range. The team stepped out, the ground rough beneath their boots. The air was dry but heavy, filled with a strange hum. Asha led the way, following the signal from her device. The path grew steeper and harder to climb. Dan looked back at the team. Stay close. Watch each other. They moved through narrow passes and shadowed caves. Strange sounds echoed in the distance. The team's weapons were ready, but no enemy appeared yet. At one point, Dan tripped over a glowing vine. He looked closer. The plant shimmered with light and energy. Asha smiled faintly. These plants grow where the hive's power flows. They protect the path. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Rocks shifted. The team stopped. Alert. From the shadows, small creatures appeared. They were dark and thin. With glowing eyes, they hissed and rushed toward the team. The soldiers fired. But the creatures were fast. Asha raised her hands. Blue light burst forth, pushing the creatures back. Dan helped a soldier who had fallen, then joined the fight. After the creatures fled, Asha said, They are sentries. They guard the hive. The team moved on, careful and quiet. Finally, they reached a large cave. The entrance was covered in strange symbols glowing with soft light. Asha stepped forward. This is the hive. Inside, the cave was vast and alive. Walls pulsed with light and energy. Strange machines hummed and moved like living things. Dan felt a chill. This place was not natural. It was built by a mind far greater than any he had known. Suddenly, a voice filled the cave. It was not spoken, but felt inside their heads, cold, dark, and powerful. Why do you come? Asha stood tall. To end the control. To free those you hold captive. The voice laughed. You think you can stop the hive? Dan clenched his fists. We don't think. We will. The cave began to shake. Machines rose from the walls, closing in on the team. Asha raised her hands. Light flowed from her fingertips, meeting the dark machines. The battle had begun. Dan fought beside her. He fired his weapon, dodged attacks, and helped his friends. The machines were strong, but the team was stronger. Together, they pushed forward. At the center of the hive, they found a glowing core. It pulsed with dark energy, sending waves through the cave. Asha moved closer. This is the source. She reached out, touching the core. Blue light clashed with dark energy. The cave shook again. Dan watched as the core cracked, then shattered into pieces. The dark voice screamed and raged. The machines stopped moving. The cave grew silent. Outside, the sky brightened. The enemy ships in the distance fell from the sky, one by one. The team returned to the transport ship, tired but victorious. Captain Morrow smiled. You saved us all. Asha looked at Dan. Together, we are stronger. Dan nodded. This is only the beginning. The ship lifted off, heading back to New Earth Base. The stars shone bright above them. A new day had come. The transport ship touched down at New Earth Base just before dawn. The sky was painted with soft pink and orange hues. Inside, the team was tired but filled with hope. They had destroyed the hive and broken the enemy's control. Now, the future looked brighter. Dan helped Asha from the ship. She walked slowly but with strength. The people waiting cheered softly. No longer afraid, they looked at her with respect and gratitude. Captain Morrow stood nearby. You've done more than we ever hoped. Asha smiled gently. We did it together. Dan felt proud. He had come to care for Asha, not just as an ally but as a friend. She was no longer just an alien girl to him. She was part of his world. The base began to heal. Repairs were made quickly. The shield towers worked better than ever. Scientists studied the broken pieces of the hive, learning how to protect themselves from any future threats. One afternoon, Dan and Asha walked outside the base. The desert was calm. The sun warmed their faces. Asha turned to Dan. Your people have great strength. Dan smiled. So do you? She looked at the distant mountains. I want to help more. Not just defend, but to build peace. Dan nodded. We want that too. For the first time, Asha spoke about her home. My people lived in light and thought, but the Varnik took control. They silenced many stars. I escaped to warn others. Dan listened carefully, and now you have a new home. Asha looked at him. If you will have me. Dan took her hand. You're already part of it. As days passed, the base became a place of learning and friendship. People shared stories, food, and hopes. Asha taught them about the stars, about the power of light and mind. Children played near the towers, watching the sky. Soldiers trained, not just to fight, but to protect and understand. One evening, as the sun set, Captain Morrow called a meeting. The room was full of faces eager to hear. We faced a great threat, he said, but we stood strong. We fought with courage and wisdom. We welcomed a stranger who became our friend, and together, we survived. He looked at Asha. She reminded us that sometimes the greatest power comes not from weapons, but from trust. The room erupted in applause. Later, Dan and Asha stood on the tower, looking out at the stars. Do you think they will return? Dan asked. Asha shook her head. Not like before. We showed them we are ready. We will watch the stars, protect the light. Dan smiled. Together, Asha's eyes shone softly. Together, The night was peaceful. The future was open. And New Earth Base was no longer just a place of war, but a symbol of hope. The alien girl who once faced danger alone had found a family, and the people who almost cut her in half had learned the true meaning of courage and friendship. Together, they were ready for whatever the stars would bring next.